Okay, everybody, here we go. This week in Congress. So you heard about the comments from the governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, where they said the baby's aborted, but it's alive. So what do we do? And he said, well, we're going to make it comfortable and ask the mother make a decision. So what we did in Congress this week, among other things, was what's called a discharge resolution, because we brought it up a bunch of times to the Democrat Party and said, look, we want to do this legislation to make sure that a baby who is aborted, a baby that is aborted that is alive, is cared for just like another baby who wasn't aborted but is alive at the same point, and they won't do it. So we're trying to do a thing called a discharge resolution, which you get enough signatures to bring it to the floor. And so the discharge resolution is for the Born Alive Protection Act for children, little babies that are aborted but are alive when they're born, so that they can't be killed. They can't just be left to, they literally put them in a closet or just let them lay there until they die or what have you. And so that was a big thing for us this week. We also had a joint session of Congress with the NATO Secretary General, Mr. Stoltenberg, and I think one of the interesting things about that is that he talked about how President Trump talked to the other NATO members and got them to start paying their fair share, so that, look, we're proud members of NATO, and NATO performs a great security service not only for Europe but for America also. But it doesn't mean that we signed up to pay for everybody's security so that they don't have to, and they have obligations and they haven't met them for years and years and years and decades. And President Trump said, "We've had enough. If you don't start paying, we're going to pull out." And that threat actually got them to pay, and I think it's up to about the tune at the end of the year of $100 billion additional that other countries are finally paying and paying their fair share. So that's one of the great things I took out of that. We also did Senate Joint Resolution 7 to direct the removal of the United States Armed Forces from hostilities in the Republic of Yemen that have not been authorized by Congress. The issue here was, and I voted no on that, is because we aren't involved in hostilities in Yemen. Saudi Arabia is. They have the boots on the ground. They are targeting the Houthi rebels that are backed by Iran. What we were helping with was targeting, so that they didn't inadvertently hit civilians, that they were hitting military targets. Quite honestly, this is a move just simply to embarrass the president. And so I voted no on it, but it passed anyhow, and I suspect the president will veto it. We are not thrilled, and I'm not thrilled with the Saudis, but if you compare the Saudis to the Iranians, there's no contest. The Iranians are the enemy of the United States, and that's how it is. So in an imperfect world, if the Saudis are trying to defend their stake against the Iranians in a proxy war, we have to decide who we're with, and it's certainly not going to be the Iranians in this case. So that was the deal on that. The House Judiciary Committee offered subpoenas for Attorney General Barr to get the full Mueller report. The Attorney General has said that he will have the full report by the middle of the month, and it seems like he is working diligently to make that timeline. What's interesting as well is that under the law and under the rule, there are provisions that can't be given to the public because they are of a classified nature or they are grand jury nature. And Mr. Nadler, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, knows that. As a matter of fact, during the Clinton impeachment and investigation and impeachment trials, he said just that certain things must remain outside the public view because other people that shouldn't be besmirched or classified information is not meant to be out in the public because it divulges sources and methods. Yet in this case, they're saying either give it all to us or that's unacceptable. So what they're literally doing is asking the attorney or demanding the Attorney General break the law, and I suspect he will not do that. He has said he's going to give us the full report to the extent of the law that he's able, and I suspect he will. And we ought to wait, in my opinion, to see for a week or a week and a half to see what he gives us before we start complaining about what he gives us, since we don't know what that's going to be yet. If it's lacking at that time, then I think a case can be made, but we don't even know what that is. And then finally, the one bill, because we're kind of doing essentially about one bill a week here, which is breathtakingly slow for Congress, but it is what it is what's called H.R. 1585, the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2019. Now, this is ostensibly for women who are abused, spousal abuse or any other kind of violent abuse, to provide grants for them to find lodging, take care of themselves away from the person that's abusing them, and get themselves kind of on their feet, so to speak, so they have some protection. So it's really important, and I will tell you, from coming from a family, I don't want to get into my personal situation, but that has suffered some of this abuse. This is an important issue, and so first of all, we should have never let it lapse. But this is a political statement. They're using domestic violence to make a political statement, which is really disappointing and unacceptable, quite honestly. But it's called the Violence Against Women Act, and it's being reauthorized finally. But let me tell you, I voted no for it for a couple reasons. First of all, just like some of the legislation in the past that remains the same, the money that's supposed to go to the victims unfortunately goes to lobbyists, which I find breathtakingly unacceptable. But along with that, it also implements alternative justice responses, which place the victim potentially the victim and the abuser in the same room, because there's some feeling out there that the abuser hasn't really committed a crime by abusing the victim, and so they're maybe misunderstood or so. I will tell you this, from my experience, no victim wants to be in the room with the abuser that they're trying to get away from, and that's crazy to me. These abusers need to be punished for their actions. That's just how it is. It conditions eligibility for some of this VAWA funding, the Violence Against Women Act funding, on discouraging victim testimony. So law enforcement can't prosecute the abuser without the victim testifying, but yet they're going to be eligible for the grant and not testify, and the abuser is going to go free and just abuse either the same person again or somebody else. It just makes no sense to me. It allows for biological males to be housed in women's prisons. It's already happened, and of course the biological male then has gone on to rape women. So that's a problem. It allows biological males access to female-only domestic violence shelters, which, quite honestly, as you can clearly see, jeopardizes not only other women there that are there trying to seek shelter from abuse, but maybe their children, including small girls. I've been to these domestic violence and abuse shelters, and as a guy who's never abused anybody, the women that are there don't want to be near the guy. You can't just walk in and you can see the place, but most times the women that are housed there don't want you to see them and don't want to see you. Yet we would put men in the same place. To me, it's wrong-headed. There are also constitutional concerns. It gives authority to Indian tribal law over non-tribal citizens. So if you live in Harrisburg, you could literally be tried in an Indian tribal court somewhere on an Indian reservation, somewhere out of the state. I don't think anybody signed up for that. It also allows for the taking of Second Amendment constitutional rights of the accused, even if there is no personal contact whatsoever. So somebody can make the claim that you're abusing them. They can take your constitutional right away from you based on that claim. And it allows for taking away the Second Amendment rights based on the claim of one party only. It's called ex parte. So they make the claim, you don't get a say in it, and your rights are taken away from you. That's clearly unconstitutional. And so, look, it's unfortunate they named it this way. They named it the Violence Against Women Act because if you vote against it, then, of course, you can expect the TV ads against Scott Perry that the Scott Perry that has a mother, a wife, and 2 little girls. A majority of my staff are women that I hate women. That's what the ad's going to be because I voted against it. But I'm telling you the reasons why. And there's even more. Believe it or not, it provides unemployment compensation unrelated to the employer. So the employer has to pay more money for unemployment compensation based on the claims that are made for his employees, his or her employees, and it has nothing to do with anything at work because they're receiving unemployment compensation based on something that didn't happen at work at all. So, and there's even more regarding housing and so on and so forth. So a really problematic bill. It will not see the light of day in the Senate. We expect to see some product come back from the Senate at some point, and we'll reevaluate that when it comes. And finally, just one note from what else happened in Congress. Well, this is what didn't happen in Congress. Just this budget from the Budget Committee. This document, it says, House Democrats likely to punt on writing a budget amid divisions. One of the things that we do in Congress is figure out how much money we're going to spend and what we're going to spend it on. It's like a core function. And it's not like a core function. It is a core function of what we do. No matter which party fails at getting a budget done, it is unacceptable, and it is unacceptable that the party in charge right now, I mean, this is like 101 of governing, that they're not going to produce a budget. You work through it and you produce a budget, and you go out and you tell the American people what you're going to spend their tax dollars on. So I guess we don't expect to see that happen. And well, I just thought I'd let you know. So anyhow, that's what went on this week, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one, and God bless you.